people here. This is good. Well, thank you all for coming. It's nice to see you. So as Max said, Mary said, my name is David Popp, and I was in the commercial real estate business for 30 years. Retired several years ago, and now one of the things I'm doing with my time is teaching. Thought it would be a little bit different and fun, and it's been both of those things. And it was in that context that I met Max a couple of years ago. And now he's over here. He reached out and said, hey, could you come over and when I taught business, we taught personal finance as part of that course. He said, I liked what we went through, and if you could come over here and talk to us about it, that'd be great. And some of our people are interested in real estate investment. And obviously I did that. So if you throw in a few thoughts on that, that'd be good too. So I said, sure, happy to do that. But then I thought, he said, because you got 45 minutes, 45 minutes. I thought, man, personal finance, real estate investment, 45 minutes, that's a lot. So how can I kind of squeeze that in to make it, useful for you guys? And I thought if I was a student, I'd say, we get it, there's limited time. If you can tell us the 3 most important things we need to know, we'll be good. All right? Just what's the 3 most important things? So basically that's how I set this thing up. What are 3 key fundamentals you need to know to build wealth moving forward? And it's appropriate actually to set it up that way. Because when you're trying to build wealth over the course of your careers and lifetimes, it's not so much about getting a lot of things right. Because you really don't have to get a lot of things right. What it's more about is not getting a few key things wrong. Because if you do that, it can submarine you. Okay? It can kill you if you get a few key things wrong. So tonight we're going to talk about 3 areas where people fall off the beam. Okay? And hopefully you won't. So that's how I structured this thing. If you have questions, feel free to call them out. If you've got to go to catch whatever, it's fine. Right? I'm teaching now, so I'm used to people coming and going as I'm talking. It's no problem. Happy to do that. So with that, let's see if I can advance this thing. I should be in IT. I got this figured out already. 3 principles. Okay. 1 each under the banner of savings, credit, and investing that we're going to talk about. But slides are screwed up. Oh well. That says compound if you couldn't figure out. It's supposed to figure out. The magic of compound interest is what links all of these principles together. And I know you guys, University of Maryland students, you get compound interest. But because it's absolutely foundational to what we're going to talk about tonight, I just want to hammer home the concept so you're 100% clued in on what we're going to be talking about. And I can do that best with a little illustration. I need a volunteer. All right, somebody's volunteered. And what's your name again, my friend?
My name is Mark.
Mark, okay. Let me ask the audience. Mark has a piece of paper. How many times do you think Mark would fold this piece of paper in half? That's 1, that's 2. How many can you fold it in half? 7. Go for it, Mark, and let me know what the answer is. That's 2. 3. I hear 7. Other guesses?
Probably 9.
9? Man, you got confidence in Mark's strength. Let's see. And don't hurt yourself, Mark, all right? Don't be straining your thumbs on me. I don't know what Max's insurance is like here, all right?
Not too good.
Get what you can get. Tell me what you get to. This is 6. And I can't really get to 7. Right? I mean, I wouldn't call that 7, right? I call it 6. What do you got?
I think I'm at 7.
All right, let's take a look. 7, 6, okay? So these are both about the same, right? So let's use Mark's. Mark folded a piece of paper in half 7 times, ½ inch. Question number 2 for the class. See how good you all are at extrapolation. Okay, so get your thinking caps on. You have the biggest piece of paper in the world. Mark has the biggest piece of paper in the world. It's the size of the state of Maryland. Mark has infinite strength. He can fold this thing an infinite amount of times. If he folded it 7 times and it got to be, I don't know, ½ inch, how many times would he have to fold it to reach, and just give me a ballpark here, estimate, the moon? ballpark estimate. 6 times or 7 times half an inch, how far to the moon?
20,000.
20,000. Estimate.
50,000.
50,000. More.
Rather,
Millions?
17 million.
17 million. All right. I like those estimates. Everybody's got a phone, right? Do we have service in here, I hope? Take out your phones. Do me a favor. Take out your phones and Google it. Google fold paper to moon. And when you get the answer, let me know what it is.
42.
What?
42.
What? 42? 42?
The meaning of life.
42? Wait a minute. What happened to 50,000? What happened to 17 million? What happened to millions and billions? The answer is 42. 7 of Mark's folds got us to half an inch. But if we did it 42 times, we're at the moon. That, my friends, is the power of compound interest. And that is how you're going to build wealth, and it's how you're going to get rich. That's how you're going to get rich. Now, if this website comes up, let's see. Loading. Oh, look at that. Here's the math for those who are like, I don't play for 40. Here's the math. So one piece of paper is 0.1 millimeters, and then it's 0.2, 0.4. Our friend Max got up to 12. But if he kept going to 42, it would be 439, whatever that number is. If you were to graph it, that's what it would look like. And the shape of that curve, keep it in mind, because you're going to see it over and over again tonight. That is the power of compound interest, the shape of that curve. Okay? Our brains are more or less hardwired to think in a linear fashion. Simple interest. One piece of paper, one piece of paper, one piece of paper. Simple interest. Interest on principal, interest on principal, interest on principal. The way it works, compounds. Not just interest on principal. Interest on interest on principal. Interest on interest on interest on principal. Interest on interest on interest on interest on principal. Blah, 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 blah. You get the picture. It is an incredible power. That's how you get 42 folds to reach the moon. So when we're talking about compound interest, that's what I want to put to work for you. Okay? 42 folds to reach the moon. Now, for young people, one of the biggest assets you have in terms of building wealth is time. Time. Because you really only need 3 things to get rich. 3 things. And one is something everybody here has, except for me. Time. Congratulations, you have one of the 3 things you need to get rich. Second thing you need, a decent rate of return. And I'm going to give you the answer to that. Okay? So I'll tell you how to get that. So you're going to walk out of here tonight, unless you walk out early. You're going to walk out of here tonight with 2 of the 3 things you need to get rich. Time, and then the decent rate of return, how to get it. The third thing, the only thing you need, you have to regularly invest a certain amount of money. And that's not a trick. Like, oh, yeah, you invest $100,000, no problem, we're rich. It ain't that much. It's not that much. Here's one example. Assuming a 10% annual return. First question is, 10%, is that realistic? Yeah, it's realistic. If you take a look at the S&P 500 returns going back to 1928, when the forerunner of the S&P 500 started, the annual average return is 9.64%. That's going back to 1928. So what if you said, what's the last 50 years? Who cares about what happened in World War II in the 1950s? 10.24%, the last 50 years. We said, what about the last 10 years? Who cares about what happened in the 80s and 90s? 12.44%. S&P 500 average annual return. So yeah, 10% is a real number. So if somebody who is 25 years old, that's older than most of you guys, not all of you guys, put in $175 a month, that's $2,100 a year. Pennies. Pennies. I don't know what the starting salary is today for University of Maryland graduates, but I'm assuming $45.50 is probably the low end of that. My guess is it's more than that. $2,100 a year is pennies. And if you put in $2,100 a year for 40 years, here's the good news. You're gonna have $1 million. You would have only put in 84 grand. Do the math. $175 a month times 12 months times 40 years is $84,000. You put in 84,000 and you walk away with $1 million. For people who were rich, they didn't get rich by the amount of money they put in. They got rich by the returns on the amount of money they put in. That's how they got rich. And people, generally speaking, don't get rich like that. They get rich like that, due to compound interest. That's how it works. Does that make sense? Questions on that? Because it's a critical component as we go through this to kind of get that. Yes, sir.
General question.
Sure.
Easy to answer for myself. I just want to get your input on it. Let's turn that 40 years into 10 years.
Mhm.
What's the investment monthly looking like? How reasonable do you see that happening consistently? Like,
When you say how reasonable do you see that happening consistently, so tell me exactly what you mean by that.
so 125 a month, cool. But let's
175 a month.
175 a month for 40 years. That would get you at $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Triple it or quadruple it every month into the S&P 500. In 10 years, that's $1 million.
In 10 years, you're probably only going to be to here. You're not going to be a quarter of the way there. You're not going to be at $250,000. I don't know if I'm approaching this the right way, but you're not even going to be near $250,000 after 10 years. And one of the reasons that people don't, save for the long term is because they're not.
Yeah.
Because when you first start, it takes a while before you really kick it into gear. Okay? You had 7 folds and you got a ½ inch. If I told you you'll be in the moon in 42 and you've done it 7 times and you're a ½ inch, what are you going to think? I'm never going to get there. It's not going to happen. And people stop.
And you get that 10% return on the whole thing even though you're continuing to put money into the account.
Yeah,
Like
if
want
you invest in the S&P 500 index fund,
Yeah.
which we're going to talk about, it returns on average 10% a year, 9.64.
Right.
If you're looking for the last 94 years. Yeah. Yeah. Other questions?
When you invest, do you think investing one time $175 a month, or do you think over the period of a month you invest portions amount up to $175?
Great question. I think as you move through life, as you have money, you should invest it. I don't think you should wait and hold it and try to time the market, as we're going to talk about a little bit. Okay? Short answer is, or an illustration of that is, let's say the market's down. You have $100 to invest every month. And the price for an S&P 500 index fund is $100 a share. Theoretically, you have $100. $100 a share, you can buy 1 share. Now the price goes down, it's now $50 a share because the market's down. Now you can buy 2 shares. So by putting in the same amount every month, you automatically are kind of buying low. Because when it's low, you can buy more. And when it's high, you can buy less. That's good, you want to buy low. So therefore, I think you guys should invest over time when you have the money. I don't think you should hold it, for instance, to the end of the year. Does that make sense? So 10%, we talked about 10%. Let's look at 7%. You might think, 10%, I can't get 10%. I love this one. It's from JP Morgan, asset manager. 7%. If you're getting a 7% return over the course of your lives, your investments, you're doing it wrong. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. You should be able to get higher than 7%. Okay? So over time, I'd say this is not good. But this shows the incredible importance of time. 3 people, Susan, Bill, and Chris. Susan is the dotted line. She invests $5,000 a year between the ages of 25 and 35 and stops. 25 to 35, 5,000 a year, 50 grand, and stops. At 65, when she retires, she has 600 grand. Bill, he doesn't start till he's 35. He invests for 30 years. So he puts in 150 grand, 3 times more, right? 150 grand versus 50 grand. But because he started at 35, he has less money at retirement. Time is critical to building wealth. Critical. Chris combines the two. He starts at 25, 5 grand every year to 65. And at a crappy return of 7%, still is over $1 million. But there's that shaping it. Where's the growth? It's at the end. It's at the end. That's where it really kicks in. Once you get to here, whew, it takes off. You got to get there though. That's why you got to start early. Because if you start when you're 40, you're going to get there, it's going to stop. You're not going to get it. But if you start now when you're early, not only will you get here and here, but once you get here, you take off. Because if it takes this long to get $1 million, it doesn't take that long to get 2 million. That's how long to get $1 million. It's that long to get to 2 million because you're here. And then that long to get to 4 million, and you smooth sailing. But you got to get there, so you got to start early. It's critical. Make sense? Last example, then we're going to move on. 6%. Doing something real wrong if you're getting 6% long-term over time. Okay? You're doing it wrong. But even then, if you start at 20, what's the annual 6% here? 20. Let's say, 4,300 a year. 500 is what? I should know this. 6,000 a year. Even at 6%, you can get there. It's not that much for University of Maryland graduates. It just isn't. And that's assuming this, the same for every month. Generally speaking, as you guys make more money, you're going to be able to invest more. And obviously, the more you invest, the more it grows. But this just assumes you're investing the same thing. It's just not that much. It's not that hard to become a millionaire. It just isn't. The reason more people aren't millionaires, one key reason, they don't know. They don't know how to do it. They don't understand. Just don't know. And by the time they figure it out, it's too late. Because you don't have time going for you. Talk about millionaires. Let's see if this thing comes up. Oh, look at this. We're in Maryland, University of Maryland. Small state. Maryland's a small state. How many millionaires do you think we got in Maryland? Small state grant.
7,000.
7,000.
Less than 3% of Maryland's population.
Less than 3% of Maryland's population. You want to give me a number?
That's like 30,000.
30,000. Anybody else?
I think it's still more than
30,000, maybe more than that, 7,000. Anybody else?
No,
Be brave.
that. Well, no, it's 7.
Be brave. Give me a guess.
100.
How about 5,000?
5,000. All right. Later. Let's take a look. Millionaires in America. This is from 2020. It's the most recent information I could find. Ranked. They ranked the 50 states. Virginia, D.C., and Maryland are in the top 10.
Oh boy.
Now this is ranked by percentage, okay? So the top state has the most percentage of millionaires per 100, or per 1,000. So let's see where Maryland ranks. Let's see, we're not gonna go through all 50, don't worry. 51, Mississippi, 4%. Let's get to the top 10. Let's see how many millionaires are in Maryland. Where's 10? And you're 10 yet? 25. I gotta get
How
down.
about you can do Control F and then type in Maryland?
Next, I want to show DC and Virginia, show you where they are. All right, are we at 10? Well, 11, Washington. All right, where do you think Virginia, DC, and Maryland are? Virginia, number 9. Where do you think DC is? I'm going to slow down when we get to Maryland.
Top 5.
DC, number 6.
No, DC makes sense.
Where's Maryland? Give me top 5. You called it.
Top 3.
Not 5. Not 4. Not 3.
No, I guess it's number 1, isn't it?
It is number 2.
That's nice.
How many millionaire households are in Maryland?
222,189, which is insane.
And that's households. That's households. So if my wife and I are a household, you say there's 2 millionaires, right? We're a household. So if there's 221,000 households, how many millionaires are there? $300,000, $350,000, right? It's a lot more than people think. People think millionaires, oh, that's entertainers, it's athletes, it's CEOs. 7,000. It's people think. Who are these people? There's 221,000 households, 300,000 plus millionaires. They ain't all CEOs, they ain't all athletes, they aren't entertainers, not even close. Government workers, professionals, blue collar workers, the military, teachers, maybe not teachers, because I'm finding out. They're people. And you know how they got there? It's not from starting companies, not from being athletes, it's from that. I mean, look at the median income. It's $83,000, median income. You don't have to make six figures to build wealth and get rich. You just don't. As long as you start early and you invest a reasonable amount, not much, I showed you, in the proper place where I'm going to show you, you're there. That's why there's so many. It's doable, folks. Don't think, I'm millionaire, I can't get there. You can get there. Questions? All right, let's show you 3 principles to help you get there. Let's get back to my slides here. All right, found them. Principle number 1. Press escape to, this is good. That's what I want. Principle number 1, savings. Start saving now, because tomorrow never comes. When I say time is critical, it's critical. You guys got to start now. It's easy to say I'll start tomorrow. As soon as I graduate, as soon as I get my first job, as soon as I save up enough for my first job, as soon as I get married, as soon as I have my own home, as soon as I have a first kid. You can do that until you're as old as me. Help my grandkids do, whatever. Start. You got spring break coming up. You got graduation coming up. You should pick one of those two and say, by spring break or by graduation, I'm going to have fun. Go to Fidelity, go to Vanguard, go to Schwab, go to E-Trade. Don't go to Robinhood. Don't do that. Go to any of those and start a mutual fund account. And the reason I say not Robinhood is they don't have mutual funds. I'm nothing against Robinhood. You want to go to them for other things, that's fine, but they don't do mutual funds. And that's where I think you should be, as we're going to talk about. Go to them. It's free to start it. It's free. And you know what the minimum is for most of them? Not only is it free to start, that's the minimum investment for a lot of those companies I just went through. You go online, it'll take 10 minutes. Go to Fidelity, boom, 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 boom. It's just like starting a bank account. You all have bank accounts, savings and checking account, right? You got that, you started those, same thing. Go to one of them, save up, you're going to link your bank account, okay? Last year, link it, put some money in it. Doesn't matter how much. Put in something. Put in $100 if you have it. Put in $500, put in $1,000, put in whatever you've got. But start it. That way, you got it. And every month you're going to start getting statements that'll remind you, hey, I got this thing. So if you don't have it, I think you should start it. I think you should start it by the time you graduate. There's no reason not to. There's no downside. So start saving now. How much? So I always, here, how much should I save? I like to give benchmarks. I don't want to just tell you, save as much as you can. Right? That doesn't help. You know that, save as much as you can. How much? 50-30-20 rule is a good rule of thumb. Once you guys start making money full time, 50% goes to your needs. Pay your bill, pay your apartment, pay for your food, utilities, your cell phone. 50% goes to needs. 30% have fun. I'm not telling you not to have fun, go have fun. 30% lifestyle, do what you want. Go to movies, do video games, take a trip, whatever you want to do. 20% ideally savings and investment. 50-30-20 rule. Aim for that. As students, 20% might be tough. Okay? You're just starting out. Probably not going to make as much as you're going to make. I get it. You can't do 20, you can't. Try to do 15. Don't do less than 10. No reason for it. Not for University of Maryland graduates. No reason to be doing less than 10% savings and investment. That's what I think. So how much to savings and how much to investment? Savings first. I've heard about emergency funds, right? Yeah, I think you should have one. 3 to 6 months for students is generally fine. So if you do get laid off, you got some money, right? And And whether it's 3 or 6, it depends on your situation. If you're living at home, you know, you might not have that many bills. If you got an apartment, you know, you might need to do a little bit more. But generally speaking, 3 to 6 months in savings, okay, that's liquid, is a good idea. Once you've got that, invest the rest. Good to go. Okay? You want guidelines, you want benchmarks, that's what I think you should be shooting for. How about your savings over the course of your careers? How much should you be saving? This is what Fidelity and T. Rowe Price would say, that's what you should say. Age down here. The multiple of your earnings here. So for example, which one's Fidelity? Let's see, blue. Fidelity says that when you're 30, you should have 1 times whatever you're making saved. So if you're making 100 grand when you're 30, you should have 100 grand saved. And you can see how it goes up. They both say when you're 45, you should have 4 times your salary saved. So if you're 45 and you're making 150 grand, you should have 600 grand saved. And they both say by the time you retire, whatever age that is, 10 times. What do you think you're going to be making when you're 60? Do the math. That one's easy. That's where you should be. That's what Fidelity and T. Rowe Price say, and they know a little bit about retirement savings. So you should be there. And if my guess is you're thinking, you know, by the time I'm 60, I should be making a lot of money. If you should, guess what? You should be saving a lot. To continue to live in the style that you've been accustomed to, that's how much you should save. Okay? So principle number 1 is start now. It's going to make it a heck of a lot easier. Okay? Principle number 2, this is where a lot of people fall. Credit cards. Who has their own credit cards, not their parents? Wow, a bunch. Principle number 2, pay your credit cards in full on time every month. Because if you don't, that awesome power of compound interest, where 42 folds gets you to the moon, guess what? It's working against you. It's working against you. So let's talk about how credit cards work. And just a quick primer, because not everybody has their own cards yet. When you get a credit card, your own card, you're going to have a credit limit. It's probably going to be between 3 and 5 grand for students. My guess is if you have a card already, it's probably between 3 and 5 grand. So your credit limit, that's how much you can have on credit every month. Can't go over that. Whatever you don't pay every month, that's what you pay interest on. If you pay the full amount every month, that's your interest rate. 0. Okay? So you charge $1,000 and you pay off $1,000, 0 interest. If you don't, that's when we start running into problems. Now, I do think you should have credit cards. Okay? They help you build credit. Obviously, that's good. So I do think you should have credit cards. You're going to have an APR. It's not an interest rate. It's an APR, annual percentage rate. It's likely going to be between 16 and 25%. For new students getting them, it's probably going to be 21, 22%. Probably. The average is high 19s now for everybody. For students, it's 21, 22. That's a lot. But that's not the worst of it. Interest rates on credit cards are compounded daily. Daily. And let me tell you what that means with an example. It's the easiest way to describe it. Let's say you have a credit card that's at 19.9% interest, which would be good for you guys. And you charge $2,500. You say, I'm going to pay off $100. Okay, I'll pay $100 of it. Here's what the credit card company's going to do. They send you the bill, say you owe us $2,500, or you can send $100 amount. Send them $100. They're going to take it and supply it and say, okay, now you owe $2,400. Okay, and let's say it's March 1st, you owe $2,400. Well, they're going to take that 19.9%, they're going to divide by either 360 or 365, number of days in a year. They're going to get 0.0545%. Okay, you use 365. They're going to take 0.0545%, they're going to multiply that by 2,400, because you didn't pay 2,400, you only paid 100. They're going to get $1.31. So on March 1st, you now owe $24.0131. On March 2nd, guess what they're going to do? The exact same thing. 0.0545, but now it's not 2,400 they're multiplying it by, it's 2,401 to 31. What are they gonna do on March 3rd? Same thing, but it's not 2,400, it's on the 1 plus the 1. March 4th, same thing, but it's on the 2,400 plus the 1, the 1, the 1. The 5th, 1, the 1, the 1, the 1, the 1, the 1, the 1, and you're folding paper to the moon. It compounds. So the interest is gonna go up. And you're getting billed on a monthly basis. So you're not even thinking about it until the next month, but they're thinking about it every single day, it goes up. If you were to pay $50, that's how long it would take you to pay back a lousy $2,500. 9 years in 1 month. And you would pay a total of $5,450. So forget about 19.9%. Okay? That's an APR. Your effective interest rate, if you charge $2,500 and you pay $5,450, more than double, is that? Credit cards will kill you. They'll kill you. Because the power of compound interest works against you. So please, pay off your credit cards in full every month, unless you want to be paying that, and you don't.
So if it says to charge 2,500, you just charge 2,500.
And pay the $2,500.
That's
Pay $2,500.
So, I wanna throw this out and get your thoughts on it.
Please.
So I heard that, bonds, I think, a specific, maybe T-bonds, they give you a 4% return, and they're better to hold money in as opposed to banks. You can liquidate it basically around the same time. Would you recommend that as opposed to banks?
No.
Okay.
For your savings, okay, I think that should be in something liquid that's safe, such as a checking account, savings account, or a CD. Okay, a T-bill, like a 3-month, that's safe. But for a traditional bond, you know, bonds can do this. Bonds last year tanked. It's the worst year on record for bonds last year because inflation, you know, zipped up. So I don't like bonds, personally. I don't like them. I would say be safe. T-bills, 3-month or less. CD is fine for your stuff. And I'm going to show you where I think you should put your money. Good question. So that's principle number 2. Please pay them off. Otherwise, that's working against you, and you don't want it to. That's why credit card companies make so much money, right? If anybody's driven to Tyson's recently from here on the Beltway, over on the left-hand side, before you get to Tyson's, you see, you know, these big buildings going up. I'm like, what is that? There's COVID. Who's building office buildings in the middle of, you know, COVID? It's Capital One's global headquarters. They're building big buildings. They're filling them up. You know why? That's why. It's very profitable. Very profitable. All right. What's number 3? Whoops. Credit card debt. One last word on it. Most people don't pay them off. About half the people don't pay their credit cards on a monthly basis. About half don't. And that's the average credit card debt in America. It's probably more than that now. It's a lot. That's a lot. I showed you $2,500 how long it's going to take you to pay off if you only pay a little. How do you think as long as it take you to pay that? Americans are swimming in credit card debt. All right. This will answer your question. Last principle. Where do I think you should put your money to get that decent return we talked about? I think you should put it in an index fund that tracks the S&P 500. Why do I think that? Here are some other alternatives to include bonds. Over time, a diversified portfolio of stocks have outperformed other investments. It's really no more complicated than that. Over time, a diversified portfolio of stocks has outperformed. Warren Buffett thinks that's where you should be. I think that's where you should be. A lot of financial professionals think that's where you should be. These are the returns. Going back to 1928. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of data. 9.64%. And this starts in 1928. If you were going to Jimmy numbers, the last year you would start is 1928, right before the Great Depression. In the last 50 years, even higher. In the last 10 years, even with last year being a down year, S&P lost 19% last year. Even with that, more than enough to build wealth, more than enough to get rich, more than enough. just put it in there. You're diversified, you own 500 stocks, fees are low, it's an index fund. What's not to like? For your whole lives. Most of my money, index funds. You don't outgrow that. I don't turn 40 and 50 and say, okay, I don't need these returns anymore. They're awesome returns. You're diversified and the fees are low. You want to do other stuff? It's fine. I do something called core and explore. Most of my money is core, it's in there. And then I play around. You might think healthcare is going to outperform or tech's going to outperform. It's fine. If you think something's going to outperform, play around with it. You think bonds are going to outperform, that's fine. But I think if the core is there, you feel better playing around.
Well, is there a limit of how much money you can put
In an S&P 500 index fund, there is not. Put as much money as you have into an S&P 500 index fund. In fact, we're not going to have time today to talk about 401ks and IRAs, but if you had a 401k and IRA, and I can answer questions about them, you can put all of that into an S&P 500 index fund. And if you're with just Fidelity does most of the 401ks. You could have it in the exact same Fidelity 401k fund. You could have your IRA there, you could have your 401k there, and you could have your mutual fund account that we just talked about all there. It could be the exact same fund with the exact same company, all three of those if you wanted to. So yeah, that's a great question. The answer is yes. And the nice thing about these mutual funds, they put aside 401k and IRA for a minute, mutual fund, you move money in and out anytime you want. Move it in and out anytime you want. I don't think you should do that, but you can. It's not like it's going, now it's going to retirement. It's not. You need to pull it out.
Is the money just automatically reinvested back in?
Yes, generally speaking, it will reinvest unless you tell them, to send me dividends.
Okay.
Generally, it'll reinvest, and that's what I think you should do.
Okay.
There's no reason to have, to be taking dividends. You're getting paid. Reinvest the dividends. Great question.
When do you think, well, obviously, money will compound interest compound, and at age of 60, you'll have over $1 million, but that, when do you think, not take fully out, but take some money out, use it, I don't know, in that sense?
Generally speaking, unless you need it, I think you should leave it in. No reason not to. Let it in and let it continue to grow. I mean, that's how you quit work early. Because your money can work harder than you can, right? It starts getting into, $1 million, $2 million bucks. If it returns 10%, you have $2 million. That's $200,000. Who needs to work? That's why I don't work, right? And once you get there, your money can work harder than you can. It's no secret, and it's just not that hard. It just isn't. As long as you do what I said, start early, put it into a fund, and regularly invest, a decent amount, not that much. It's not that hard.
What does tax look like?
It depends on the investment, okay? If you take dividends, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds,
Right.
If it's a short-term dividend, it's going to get taxed at whatever your tax rate is, which is a function of how much money you make, okay? Yeah, long-term dividend, which if you keep it in there more than a year, it could be either 0%, 15%, or 20%, depending on your, which is generally less than what your tax rate's going to be.
Right.
So you will, obviously you have to pay taxes. I mean, no matter what, you got to pay taxes at some point. Even with IRAs and 401ks, at some point you got to pay tax on them. It's deferred for those. They're good vehicles. I think you should be in them. But at some point you have to pay taxes.
Yeah, so you know that how S&P 500 is like the biggest 500, like 500 companies, and whatever amount of money they get yearly, they divide it by they split it with the companies by 500.
So
it's one company gets more money than the other company.
So in an S&P 500 index fund, it's the 500 biggest companies in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the fund is actually weighted. So Apple, it's the biggest company. You're going to have more shares of Apple than you would of, pick another company, Nike. Because Apple's a lot bigger than Nike. Okay, so Apple might be 3% of the fund, and Amazon might be 2.98% of the fund. Nike might be 0.6% of the fund. McDonald's might be 0.4% of the fund. So when you own that fund, you literally own all those companies. You own them.
So most of your money is in Apple. Basically.
Most of your money is in Apple if you're an S&P 500 index fund because they're the biggest company in America. All right, Microsoft's second. Is Amazon third now? I think Google's third, Amazon's fourth. Yeah, so most of your money's in Apple. But still, you own 500 funds, so, it's great.
Yeah, sorry if this is the last time.
No,
but
please.
I was wondering what your opinions are on day trading, swing trading.
I don't like it. Get me more clear than that. I think it's dangerous. And I think it's real hard for anybody, I'm not just saying students, anybody, to be able to outflank professionals. I think if you're doing it, you're working on individual stocks usually. And so, there's risk when you're working with individual companies as opposed to mutual funds, which is a whole lot of companies where you're diversified. So I think there's more risk there than it's worth. In my mind, if you can get those returns long term, and you have diversification and low fees, man, I don't see a lot to dislike about that. And I'll say this. For all of you, you're really looking for the sweet spot in risk return.
What's the sweet spot?
Here's what I think the sweet spot is. Risk return. On one side, let's say it's keeping your money in a savings bank or checking account. You're probably never going to lose if you keep your money in a checking or savings account, right? You're never going to lose money. We've never had negative interest rates. Never lose. But you're never going to make anything. You're going to make pennies, literally pennies, in interest. No risk, no reward if you're in keep your money in checking savings account. Now let's look at the other end. You invest in crypto or lottery tickets, okay? For most people, that's not enough risk return to be at a CD, but lotto or crypto is too much risk return. So the question you ask yourself is, where is that sweet spot? Where is the sweet spot where I'm going to get the return I need, but I feel like I'm not risking a lot? And that's where I think it is. Because you're getting a return. 100 years of evidence says you're going to get this return. You're diversified, it's low fees. People day trade, but you know what? To me, I think you're too far out that risk reward spectrum doing that. I think there's too much risk for, the possibility of more reward. I think there's more downside risk than upside risk. So to me, it's too far out in the risk reward spectrum. That's why.
You talked about CDs. Can you just clarify what that is and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So a CD is a certificate of deposit. Generally speaking, if you have money in your savings or checking accounts, you're getting nothing, right? You're getting less than 0.5% interest. You're literally getting pennies. If you guys look at your statements every month, look at them. It's going to be 5 cents that you're getting. CDs, you'll get a little bit more. It's a certificate of deposit. It basically means if you get a 6-month CD, the bank has access to your funds for 6 months. It's real safe because what's going to the bank to do in 6 months? They're not going to go under, right? So it's safe. So you get a little bit more interest because the bank knows they have your money for 6 months. They can lend it. With your savings and checking accounts, you can pull out any time. So they don't know that they'll have it for 6 months. So that because they know they can have it for a little bit more, they pay a little bit more. But it's still as safe as you can get. Does that make sense?
Is that based off like interest rates, or how does that?
Generally speaking, the longer the CD is for, so a 1-year CD, you generally get a little bit more interest rate than a 6-month CD because the bank has access to your money more. It's more valuable to them, so they'll pay you a little bit more. But still, we're talking, you ain't gonna get rich on CDs.
No.
Not even close. But if you're looking to juice your returns a little bit, you can juice your returns a little bit. One other thing. I don't think you should try to time the market. We talked about that a little earlier. Your question was good. But I think if you have money, you should put it in. 2 reasons. 2 examples I'm going to give you. So this is from Fidelity. 40 years. It was right before COVID. If you had put in $10,000 on January 1st, 1980, and you didn't touch it for 40 years, 40 years, 3 months, 10,000 would become 700,000. First, I think of that for compound interest. You didn't put in a penny. Your 10,000 became 700,000. So today, put in 10,000. If the returns are the same in 40 years, you'll have 700,000 without investing another penny. But if you missed 5 trading days out of 10,000, 40 years and 3 months is over 10,000 trading days. If you missed the 5 best, look what happened to your returns. If you missed the 10 best, look what happened to your returns. They're in half. I don't like trying to time the market. If you miss a couple of days, it can kill your returns. So I don't think you should do it. I think people think, I can be here, I can be here. COVID. COVID hit in 2020, right? March of 2020?
Yeah.
If I came to you January 1st, 2020, and I said, you know what's going to happen this year? We're going to have a pandemic. We never had it before. Businesses are going to close. Restaurants are going to close. Schools are going to close. They're going to shut down. You can't go into them. That's what's going to happen in 2020. If I told you that, people can't go out. The airline industry stopped. The hotel industry stopped. The restaurant industry. You guys know. If I told you that on January 1st and said, what do you want to do with your money? You have a choice. My guess is most of you would say, put it into savings and checkings. I don't want to do that. Right? That wouldn't make sense. You know what the S&P 500 did in 2020? It was up 16%. You know what it did in 2021? It's up 27%. Full year of COVID. Would anybody have thought that? I'm going to live in the S&P 500? It's hard to know. It's hard to say, no, I think tech, I think this, I think this. It's fine to do it, but I think that should be the explore portion of what you do, because it's hard to know. So I think you should go over and explore. Most of your money in the S&P 500, if you want to play around, play around. But you can make a mistake easy, and it can suffer.
Just curious on what your return rate was in investing.
Man, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Because when I track it, it includes money we put in, and so I don't really track, okay, not putting money we put in or money we take out. I just know how much I'm making with the money I put in and take out, so that's not really it's not a fair, exercise. But most of my money is in the S&P 500. And as I said, I play around. Where I play around, I've had money in healthcare and technology, which up until last year was great. Last year wasn't so great, such as life. Real estate, and I'm a real estate guy.
Yeah.
But real estate can be tough.
Could you clarify, when you say by missing the best, days?
So if you missed the best 5 days, so if you took those 10,000 days and you ranked them from, this was on this day the market went up 8%, and this day 7.7%, 7.6, for 10,000 days. If you took the very 5 best days over 40 years and you weren't invested on those 5 days, that's what would happen to your returns. It's a lot. It's a lot. So that's what I think. It's conservative, it's safe.
How do you invest in real estate? What do you do?
Number of ways to do it. I think the safest ways to do it, you can buy a real estate mutual fund.
I'm just asking, how do you do it?
Oh, how did I get? I had a company. Okay, so I was basically the director of a company that was a commercial real estate company, and we would develop buildings, we would buy buildings, finance buildings, we would do all that. That was, kind of what we did. And I was essentially the manager, so I worked with a bunch of brokers who did that stuff. But, I was an office guy. And the office market, it stinks because of COVID, mostly. Interest rates are high, so that doesn't help. But, think about the office market after COVID, right? Go to an office building today, there ain't people in it. What are companies doing with their space? They're shrinking. The hybrid model is likely going to be around for a long time. So the office market, it's tough. It's tough. I'll close with just a couple of thoughts on real estate, because I know interested in a couple of other people are interested. And since I mentioned Warren Buffett before, I thought, kind of be an easy way to talk quickly about real estate. Warren Buffett's kind of known for his fun, kind of quirky sayings, and these sayings are, he's speaking about investments. But I think you can apply these sayings to real estate. So if you're looking for 3 tips, here's 3 tips I give you. Number 1, substitute company for property. And I agree with you, if you're looking to invest. Buy the property, not the price. With an investor once, you're walking around in an office building. Yeah, it's not a great building. It's not very close to Metro. It's kind of in the suburbs. There's not a lot of retail around. It's kind of a generic building. The windows are a little small. The ceiling height isn't great. And he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, it's all right. He goes, but the price is great. And I'm like, yeah, but the real estate's great, but the price is great. Don't buy price in real estate. It's real hard to make a lot of money in that, because the people that are looking for value buildings like that, whether it's office or others, they've got really a cap. They're not very elastic in how much you're going to pay. so it's hard to make a lot of money, and invariably the cost to improve it costs more than you think. So, in my opinion, you should be buying great property. You're better off as opposed to buying, property at a great price. Tip number one. See people mess up. Tip number two. Be contrarian. Try to be visionary and see what other people do. I was on another tour where we're looking at a retail center. He said, "What do you think?" I'm like, I'm a real fun guy to tour with, right? And it was just okay. It wasn't great. And you know what he said to me? He goes, "You know the problem with this retail center?" I said, "Yeah, it's got a bunch of problems, but tell me." He goes, "It wants to be an office building." He was right. I didn't see that. Most people look at retail centers and say, "No, this one is close to Metro. There's a lot of retail all the way around it. It's competition for a retail center, but for an apartment, it's awesome. We can build up. It's already zoned that way. This thing should be an apartment building." The namesake of your school, Robert H. Smith. You know how he made his money? That way. Back in the 1960s, Robert H. Smith was a real estate developer. You know where he bought a bunch of property? Crystal City. You know what Crystal City was like in the 1960s?
What?
If you like junkyards, if you like warehouses and motels, you were in great shape, because that's basically what it was. Junk. And you know what he saw? There's an airport right here. It's before it was Reagan Airport, obviously, it's the 60s. There's an airport here, there's a Pentagon here, and there's basically the DC CBD here. We're right in the middle of it. This should be a lot better than it is. And he was right. Bought a bunch of land, started building apartment buildings, started putting up office buildings that Department of Defense took and defense contractors took. He was able to rent them out cheap because he bought the land for nothing. And today there's a Robert H. Smith School of Business. That's how he made his money. He saw what nobody else saw in Crystal City.
Speaking of Crystal City, I was actually at its sports pub and for New Year's Eve, and it was actually one of the best sports pubs I've been to. It was actually pretty cool and a lot of fun.
And Crystal City is now essentially being rebranded as National Landing. And who's the big company that just said they're going to put their second headquarters there? Amazon. That's Crystal City. Now National Landing, because, it's got to be rebranded. Crystal City was from, the 1960s. That's how he made his money. He saw what nobody else saw. Last thing, don't fall in love with your property. Seen it over and over again. If you've got a property and you're sinking a lot of money into it, don't fall in love with it. In many cases, you're better off saying, "No, we've got to cut our losses and move on." Because whatever money you've put in is sunk cost. That money's gone. And too often, people fall in love with it. And they try to fix it, and they're just pouring money away. So you got to be heartless and say, "You know what? It's time to move on." Those are some mistakes I've seen and paths to success I've seen in real estate. We're right up against our time. Questions on anything we talked about, I'm happy to address.
I just had a few questions.
Sure.
So, I know earlier in this discussion you were talking about, like, if you're getting returned 7%, you're doing it wrong, and if I was getting it at 6%, then I'm doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. What is the rate of return in which I'm doing it right? Like at least 10% or something?
I think if you're getting 8-9%, you're doing okay. But if you can get 10% consistently from the S&P, okay, and nobody knows the future, right? Nobody knows the future. But you've got 100 years of evidence. If you can get that from the S&P, I just don't know why you wouldn't.
Okay.
I don't know why you wouldn't. But yeah, if you can get 8-9%, that's more than enough. And I showed you that you can get there at 7, but it's just a hell of a lot harder. Because when you think about it, if you get a 10% return, after 40 years, it doesn't mean 10% is here and 7% is here. Not even close. 10% is here, 7% is there. Because it compounds for 40 years. It's 10, 10, 10, 10 versus 7, 7, 7, 7. It's a big difference over 40 years. It's not just 10 versus 7. It's a big difference.
How old were you when you started investing?
Man, that's a good question.
Long time ago, back in the days where bowl cuts were popular.
Pretty much, man.
Been 40 years yet?
I'm in my late 50s, so it was probably mid-20s. Give or take. And look, I showed you putting the same amount in over time. Because if I show you putting in more over time, you know, everybody thinks, well, of course the graph's gonna go like this, I'm putting more in. So I don't like showing that. But I put in more over time, and in all likelihood, you guys will put in more over time too, which just means that nothing's gonna go even faster. But that's why I show it going this. But yeah, it just, once you hit that right there, man, you're good to go. You're good to go. And really, your money can work harder than you can. If you want to stop, stop.
Is there a reason you use the S&P as like your example over the NASDAQ?
Yeah, because the NASDAQ is a lot more volatile than the S&P. And I don't have numbers for the NASDAQ going back that far. So NASDAQ, you know, is essentially a tech index.
I actually looked it up and it was 10% since like the 1990s or something.
Oh, has it?
Similar.
Oh, but 1990s.
Yeah, which is fair.
So,
Less time, obviously.
yeah, less time. But it's also more volatile.
I
Okay?
would, so the NASDAQ is global, right? And the S&P.
Well, the NASDAQ is the top companies in the NASDAQ, which are mostly tech companies. But it's U.S. companies, but those U.S. companies have, you know, big time overseas operations. So if you say, you know, Apple's the biggest company in the NASDAQ, they're an American company, but a lot of Apple's revenue comes from overseas. So it's not like you're not getting global exposure, you are. I have no problem with the NASDAQ fund, but again, because it's more volatile and I don't have the history, I'd be more comfortable with the S&P. If there's no more questions, thank you all for coming. It's always fun to be here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for staying. I appreciate it.